All right, what is going on, fam? Welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about how I built my dream physique at a relatively young age and how you can too if you so choose to. I'm going to be talking about some stuff that other people might not really talk about. They probably do, but I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. I have a little like note thing on my phone. And yeah, I just want to yap a little bit. So I hope you guys can learn. And thanks for listening. So, currently, as we speak, I'm on a pretty hefty bulk. I've gained like 10 pounds of lean muscle um, in like a month or something, I'd say. And it's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. Have, I'm not going to say I'm my biggest, but I look decent. My credentials are. And another thing I'm gonna say is I know I'm not the biggest guy. I know I'm not like some crazy like C-bum type of guy. I'm not saying I am by any means whatsoever. I'm not saying I have any crazy physique. I'm just saying I like what I look like in the mirror. And if you do too, then so be it. Awesome. I don't know. But yeah, so don't think I'm approaching this from some sort of ego like perspective. But anyways, first thing on the list that I want to address is genetics. And so genetics are completely important. Without genetics, genetics are going to determine what you can look like. So I'm not going to ignore the fact that genetics are absolutely huge. Some people have amazing genetics, some people have terrible genetics. And genetics can benefit you or hurt you in two different ways. One is your muscle, I don't know, there's like a correct term for it. Muscle structure, your muscle placement, how your muscles fit within each other and how they look on your body are totally genetics. And no matter what, diet, exercise plan, anything you do, nothing's going to change that. So your insertions, that's the word, sorry. Some people have high lat insertion, some people have low lat insertion, some people have long bicep, some people have short bicep. That's all genetics. Some people have a tiny little narrow waist and broad shoulders, some people don't. I have like a freaking size. I have the smallest waist out of everyone in my family, all the women included. So that's just pure genetics. Like, there's nothing you can do to ever change anything about that. So that is that. Next thing about genetics I really want to talk about is that when you're approaching your goals, you have to set a goal. See what kind of physique you want. Do you want to be someone that is just lean and shredded? Or do you want to be someone that's just a freaking mass monster, right? Or do you want to be someone that is, a little bit of both? Or do you want to be someone that's not lean, that's just huge, like a powerlifter? So, most important thing after your genetics are setting goals and intentions so that you have something to like build towards, right? While you're in the gym and while you're eating. So keep in mind your goals, keep in mind what you're aiming for, because that's going to like be the number one most important thing. And then you can structure everything around that. And keep in mind that your goals and things like that will change as time goes on. So that is that. To add on to genetics, you have to look at other people in your family, and this is a pretty easy thing to like take notice. Are people in your family naturally on the smaller side and leaner, or are people in your family naturally on the bigger side and not as lean? A lot of people, most people, this is also a thing that comes down to cultures. A lot of American people will be naturally, like, no matter what they eat, it's just going to stick with them. So keep in mind, if you have your family and your genetics are naturally inclined to be on the leaner side, like myself, or if your family and genetics are naturally, like if you did nothing, if you put in no effort, would you become fat or would you be skinny? So That is the number one most important thing to keep in mind before you start figuring out how to diet and stuff like that. Okay? So, next thing that is most important is diet, of course. I feel like I might have some hot takes when it comes to this. I think okay, first of all, you should never track anything, right? You can track protein, but protein should be pretty easy to track, okay? So the only thing you really need to track and the only thing you really need to keep, like, make sure you're hitting your goals with is protein. So for every 1 pound of body, I know everyone has a different rule for this. For every 1 pound of body weight that you have, you should be aiming for 1 gram of protein per day. So let's say you're 180 pounds, you should be eating at least 180 grams of protein a day. Some people say it's like 80%, whatever the case is. Just aim for that, okay? Next thing that is important is carbs. Carbs are going to be the fuel. This goes into genetics. If you're someone that's on the naturally leaner side, then you need carbs whatsoever because you need glycogen stores in your muscles to contract and have a good full pump. If you don't have enough carbs and glycogen stores in your muscles, you're going to hit the gym and you're barely going to get a pump. You're barely going to have energy to even like lift the weight. So carbs are super important. Now, if you're trying to lose weight and, let's say you have a layer of body fat over your physique, your abs, whatever, and you want to get rid of that, then limit carbs, but don't get rid of them. Because if you get rid of them, then you're like keto diets, for example. When you put your body into ketosis, it forces your body to go into your fat stores to get fuel. And that is how keto diets work. That's why they're effective, but they're not amazing because at the same time you lose muscle. So I don't know what the exact number is. You could do your own research on what is I think it's like 400 grams or something. But if you're trying to cut, also, okay, here's another thing. You should never go through cycles of bulking and cutting. You should stick to one thing and go with it, right? I'm not saying just stick to bulking or just stick to cutting, but you can lean bulk, right? You can just put on lean mass. So that's what you should be aiming to do here. And that's what I am advocating for. So going back, if you're trying to cut, have healthy carbs such as rice, brown rice and whole wheat bread and things like that. But keep an eye on it. Don't go too crazy with it. Don't go too crazy with your sugars because your sugars are going to be what's going to turn into your fat and stuff like that. However, if you're on the leaner side like myself, what I did is I just shoved my face with everything. And I eat absolutely everything. I don't really care. I eat ice cream. I eat loads and loads of candy. I do not care whatsoever. So if you're a hard gainer like me, then don't even think about it. Definitely keep carbs in mind and keep eating enough carbs in mind when you're trying to gain weight and trying to build your physique. And that's what I've been doing. I like to carb load before workouts, like eating like cereal or just random carb heavy stuff. It doesn't really matter. I don't care if it's healthy or not. At the end of the day, we're young. It should be all good. Now, this next category that I want to talk about is training. Okay, training is ridiculously important. I know people will say your physique is made in the kitchen or abs are made in the kitchen, whatever. I would say training is even more important. And what I really want to hit home is that when you're training, when you're in the gym, your goal should be to become a technique specialist, okay? You should aim to have your form completely dialed down. Everything should be completely perfect. I'm not advocating for ego lifting whatsoever. You should be a technique specialist. Your form should be perfect. People should be coming up to you in the gym and asking you and complimenting you on your form because it's so good. It's an art. Having good form is an art. Treat it as such. And yeah, that is super important. The most important thing about technique and being a technique specialist is that when you become a technique specialist, you can implement mind-muscle connection better. And so when you lift, mind-muscle connection is the number one most important thing. When, let's say you're hitting chest, you're hitting flies, you should be literally picturing all the muscle fibers in your chest contracting and using the cues. You should figure out what cues work for you to make sure all your muscles are contracting like how they should be. So like with I'll use the example with flies. A lot of cues that people use are like, think about bringing your elbows together. Instead of bringing your, arms together, forget that. Your focus should be on your elbows. And that will help you dial in your mind-muscle connection with your flies. This is very, very broad. So maybe we'll have a whole separate video on this. If you want, ask more questions about it, and I will surely answer in the comments. But making sure your mind-muscle connection is dialed in. You never want any rep to be wasted. You never want to do a rep you don't want to just move weight just to move the weight. You should the amount of weight you use is completely irrelevant. Should never try to lift heavy. In fact, I would totally advocate for lifting super light. Lift super light and enough weight to make sure that you can contract every single muscle. So every single muscle fiber. Okay. So another thing when it comes to your training is that you should be training to failure like your life depends on it. The last 2 sets of every exercise and every muscle group that you do should be taken to absolute complete physical failure. To the point that no matter what exertion you're putting in, the weight is just not going to move. So make sure you're training to failure. If you don't, a lot of your reps and a lot of your sets are going to be wasted. And yeah. So another thing I want to harp on when it comes to training is mentality and mindset. You want to have all the things I've mentioned earlier in mind, your mind-muscle connection, being a technique specialist. This is how you have your training mentality in the gym dialed. But another thing I'm going to harp on is motivation and things like that. And this comes from, I know people see all those videos on IG Reels or TikTok, whatever, about these cringy people that put their hoodies on and they're fighting demons, whatever. Whatever works for you works for you. I feel like I've been able to have so much motivation and have this mentality and take things to failure so easily because of the things I've gone through, and I can channel all that energy into the gym. So you need to find something. If you got to fight your demons, you got to fight your demons. Don't be scared about being, cringe. Have that mentality. You got to be, motivated through, whether that's fighting demons or whatever the case may be. Find your niche when it comes to that. And now last, but definitely not least when it comes to training, is exercise split. You want to find a good split that works for you and stick to that. I know a lot of people do upper lower. I think that's insane. Or full body. Those are both 2 terrible splits. Split at the end of the day doesn't really matter. It's just what works with you the best. What I use personally is push-pull legs, rest, Arnold, rest. And so the Arnold split is chest back on one day, shoulders, biceps, triceps, so arms on its own day, and then legs on another day. So you want to go push, which is going to be all the push muscles, chest, tris, shoulders, pull, back, bis, legs, rest, or don't rest, and then go right into Arnold, chest, back, arms, and then legs, and that keeps things, spicy, and I've noticed the pumps are absolutely insane from that, so I like that. If you need a good, switcheroo from the old push-pull legs, highly recommend it. I want to talk about other things that people may not mention, and that is your hormones. Hormones are ridiculously important. This is why all these bodybuilders go on steroids and stuff like that. But what I want to really harp on once again is that if you're a young man in your 20s, teens, whatever the case may be, if you're a young guy like us and you don't have any other like medical conditions going on, you should be pretty healthy and have a good hormonal level. You want to have high testosterone. That's the goal. You need high testosterone. You got to cut out things in your life, in your habits that contribute to having low test, and be super, 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 super mindful of having healthy, high testosterone. What I would recommend is when you go to the doctor, ask your doctor for a blood test, first of all, and ask for a hormone panel on your blood test. So that's how you can keep up with your testosterone, and that's how you can check all that healthy stuff, make sure it's all good. I think mine's like 760 or 770 or something, and that's total testosterone. Total testosterone is like what's important. There's also free testosterone. Free testosterone is the testosterone in your body that is able to do stuff. Like, it's like free. It's not bound to sex hormone, SHBG, I think, sex hormone binding globulin. So a lot of the times people will have high total testosterone but low free testosterone. So again, just keep up. I'm not an endocrinologist. Keep up with that. I might do a whole separate video on that. If you're interested on that, then let me know. I will talk about that more. But yeah, make sure your testosterone is high. Stay away from stuff that might lower it. We'll talk about that more in the next category. The last category is other factors. And the other factors that I would like to address, I like to call the 3 S's. The 3 S's are sleep, stress, and substances. So let's talk about sleep first. Obviously, everyone knows you got to sleep. You got to get your 8 hours. But 8 hours is pretty arbitrary. It's like whatever works out for your body, whatever your body needs. If you hit a super heavy workout, you might need 10 hours one day. Just make sure you're getting sleep. Don't sleep deprive yourself. That is just as important as all these other things to making sure you get a nice physique. Stress is another huge thing. If you're super stressed out, your testosterone is probably going to be pretty low and you're not going to be putting on as much muscle. So do your best to manage stress levels. This kind of leads into the next thing. If you're using substances like weed or whatever to manage your stress levels, I've realized that is an absolute terrible thing to do, because all these substances, for example, alcohol, are going to completely take away your gains. Weed will also mess with your ghrelin pathway and mess with your appetite. So in that way, I would highly suggest staying away from substances because they will destroy your physique. And so, yeah. Another thing I want to talk about, I didn't really put this on the notes, but that you got to train abs. Like, find an ab routine that works for you and stick to it. And when it comes to abs, do crazy amount of volume over anything whatsoever, and keep in mind muscle connection. Train it like any other muscle in the body whatsoever. Like, just like you think about curls and you're thinking about like moving, whatever the case may be, whatever cues you have, use cues for abs as well. Make sure all your ab muscles are contracting. Make sure your mind is locked in on the reps, and do a crazy amount of volume every exercise or every workout that you do when it comes to abs. And that's how you'll build a nice aesthetic physique if that's your goal. And yeah, so that's what I've done. That's what has worked for me. And once again, I don't think I'm some crazy bodybuilder guy. I just have, I would say, a relatively aesthetic physique, and I like it. And it's just I'm just growing and growing every day. You know, vascularity is in check, things like that. That's what comes with having your, technique dialed down in the gym, as well as your diet. And, another thing with diet is that, find out what your caloric maintenance is, and kind of use that as a guide. Although I say don't really count calories. If you're trying to bulk, you should never be hungry during the day. If you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to lose fat, expect to be hungry and let yourself be hungry. So that's how you can do it. Your body has a good, is pretty good at figuring out where it needs to be. So yeah, that is what I have for today. Might add some more in the future. Maybe we'll make another part 2 once I get bigger and have a more aesthetic physique in the future. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something. And thanks for listening. And I will catch you guys in another video. Yeah, take care.